Alright, so let's review the supplies you're going to need for this project. First, you're going to need a Cricut machine, so you can use any of the Cricut models such as the Cricut Maker, the Cricut Maker 3, Explorer 2, Explorer 3, Cricut Joy. Any of those are going to work. With the Cricut Joy machine, you're just going to need to make sure that your template isn't scaled more than 4 inches wide, because that's the limitations of the machine, but you can still cut rosettes out and make this, and since we're making smaller flowers, it works perfectly. So aside from your Cricut machine, you'll also need a mat. I'm using a standard green mat here. You could also use the light blue mat, especially if it's nice and fresh. I will be using a shadow box. There's a few different types of shadow boxes out there. There's some that come with removable glass and some that don't. If you're able to, I recommend getting the ones that have removable glass. That way you're able to glue directly into the shadow box instead of trying to get it positioned and then fit it back in. And I'm going to have resource links for these below for you, so if you don't know where to get these, I will tell you where to get them. If you plan on adding any decals or anything onto the front of your shadow box, you may also want some vinyl. So I'm going to have an example that I'm going to do with white vinyl, and then you'll need transfer tape. That is completely optional though. You'll also want to have cardstock on hand, so I'm using a 65-pound medium weight cardstock here. But you could go slightly heavier. I wouldn't recommend much over 80-pound cardstock just because it'll get a little bit hard to roll the flowers nicely. But you could use anything from 50-pound to 80-pound cardstock. You'll want to use them in colors that of course are completely up to your preference, but if you're wanting sort of this ombre look to your box where we sort of have the colors fading into one another, then you're going to want to think about that when you choose your paper. So for this example, I'm doing a pink one, and I have sort of coral pinks, light pinks, and then it fades into a much lighter pink. So just think about that when you're making your selection of paper. I recommend no less than 3 shades and up to 6 for best results. So I'm going to be using 5 different shades for this particular box that I'm working in, but you could vary that according to what colors you're using. You may want to have a pencil on hand because we're going to be tracing some cardstock for the inside of our box to be able to cover the back of the box. I will be using a quilling tool in order to roll up my rosettes, but this is technically optional. I've rolled them without them. You'll just need to use your fingers instead. You'll need a weeding tool if you decide to add vinyl to the front of the glass of your shadow box, but that's optional. You may need a pair of scissors in order to cut down our large piece of cardstock to fit to the back of our shadow box. You may want to have a Cricut scraper on hand, and I will be using a hot glue gun for this project here for our adhesive. Alright, so that's it on the supplies. Let's go ahead and get started with this project.
Okay, so to get started here in Design Space, I just want to go over a couple of quick tips to help you as you're doing your shadow box here. So first, I want to mention that if you visit the link below the video description, you're going to find this rosette here as a freebie in the Abbi Collections community. If you would like access to all of them, then you can join our premium member vault where you will get access to every design I have ever made, and you can find all the information for that below. But if you're brand new and you're just wanting to play around right now, then go ahead and grab this freebie, which is linked below, and you can check out the premium ones later on. If you're brand new to Cricut and you've never uploaded your own SVG file here to Cricut Design Space, I want to point you to the upload button over here on the left-hand side. I have a full step-by-step in-depth video on uploading SVGs to Cricut. In a nutshell, you will click on the upload button, and then you'll click on upload image. You'll browse your computer to bring in the SVG cut file and load it here into Design Space. Once it's been loaded into Design Space, you will see it here under recent uploads, and you'll just want to select it and then click add to canvas at the bottom to bring the file in. So that's a quick little tutorial there for you, but in general, if you're new to this, I want you to just visit the link below, and it's an in-depth step-by-step on uploading your own SVGs to Cricut. Okay, so what you want to do first, let's say perhaps you are a premium member and you get all of these rosettes. You want to think about which rosette you want to do for your particular shadow box. I'm going to be choosing this one. This is my favorite one, but these other ones work really well too. You could experiment with them if you want. Since I'm choosing that one, I'm just going to go ahead and group these and hide them over here in the layers panel to get them off of my canvas. Alright, so the first thing you want to think about is the size of your rosette here. So I recommend, depending on the size of your shadow box, so you're going to want to think about that. I'm doing a 10 by 10. If you're doing something smaller, you may want to consider a slightly smaller size. I am going to be doing mine at about 4.75 inches wide. Like I said, if maybe you're doing like a 6x6 or an 8x8, a much smaller shadow box, something that's smaller in size, you may want to go down closer to like 3.5 or even 3 inches with your particular shadow box. So I'm going to start with that, and then I'm going to use my duplicate button here at the top, and I'm going to place 2 there. That way I know I can cut 2 out at once. Now the amount of rosettes you're going to use is going again to vary based on your shadow box, how tightly you're going to roll the flowers, which we'll cover in this video, and how tightly you place them together. I would recommend measuring your shadow box and then doing a test rosette and getting an idea for how many you may need across the top and across the side or down the side of your shadow box. So that's something you're going to have to kind of experiment with based on your particular sizes that you're choosing. This is what I'm using in my video here. So if you're using similar sizes, then you can follow along accordingly. Of course, make sure you always save your project. And then once we get to this point here, there's really nothing else we need to do. We just need to click on our Make It button, and we're going to select medium cardstock in our Cricut materials setting. So I'm just going to click Make It here. And I am going to be using 8.5 by 11, but if you are using a 12 by 12, you can just leave this here at this default. I'm going to be using letter size. So this is what that's going to look like here, and I'm going to change that under material size before I hit continue to select my material. All right, I'm going to hit continue now. It's connecting to my Maker 3. Again, you can use any of the models that work with Cricut Design Space for this project, so don't worry if you have an Explore model or even the Cricut Joy or another model. Okay, so here we are in our settings. I'm going to be selecting medium cardstock because I'm using 65-pound weight cardstock, and I find that's usually the best setting that works for me. If you're using a maybe thinner cardstock, you might want to go with lightweight. If you're using something that's a little thicker, you may want to choose heavyweight. In general, medium cardstock will usually work fine. Let's go ahead and start cutting these out with our cardstock, and then we'll make our rosettes and assemble our shadow box.
Your machine will first take a second to measure the mat just to make sure it's the correct size for the project. All the Cricuts do this the same way. And then once it's measured the mat, it's going to flash a play or Cricut icon button right here, and that is what you'll want to click to proceed with the cut. And it's going to go ahead and cut out our rosette templates here. Okay, so once the cut is done, your double arrow button will start flashing again to unload your mat. You'll want to click that. Let's go ahead and close this Cricut machine out just to get it out of our way and get a little more space. I'm going to flip the mat over here and peel the mat away from the cardstock. This is a really important technique to use, especially with paper, so that you don't end up curling your template cutouts here, and then it can affect the way your design looks. So always peel the mat away from the material. Okay, and so we have a couple of rosettes here, and we can go ahead and curl these. So anytime you're curling one of these rosettes here, you always want to start it so that it looks like a C when you're looking at it. So the open end is right up here, and it's going that direction, and it wants to look like a C. Now, if you're left-handed, then this may be the reverse for you. A lot of us are right-handed, so I am going to show it that way because I am right-handed, but if you are left-handed, it may be the reverse. That might be more comfortable for you. So this is a quilling tool, and this just helps us roll up the paper a little bit easier, and it makes the process a little bit faster. If you don't have this tool, then you can just use your fingers to start curling from the center, and then sort of roll it up like if you were rolling up some ribbon or a cinnamon roll or something like that, and you can follow the process like that. So you don't have to have the quilling tool. I have done this many times. But for those of you who have a quilling tool or end up purchasing one, because they are very handy to have if you do a lot with paper crafts, you would want to slide the paper between the little slots that's in the quilling tool, and then you just want to start curling towards yourself. And I usually put my thumb on the end there, and then keep 2 fingers on the inside to kind of keep it even as I roll this up. So you just want to roll, roll, roll all the way to the end. So get right down to the end there, and you can pull your quilling tool out like that. What you want to do is put one finger down here on the base. This is where our glue is going to go in a minute, and one finger in the center of your rosette. And you want to lift your finger to just let it loosen a little bit. You don't want it to loosen too much, but enough to where it doesn't look so constricted and tight. It looks more natural. And now I'm going to add some glue to the base. And we're going to glue that on. And I like to kind of push it into the base and sort of shift the center around a little bit there. Kind of work it with your finger a little. And you could let it open up a little bit more if you wanted to. I did mine a little bit on the tight side just because of my shadow box and how many I'm putting per row. But you could let it open up a little bit more if you would like as well. And you would do this with all of the rosettes to fill your shadow box, however many you may need for your shadow box. Okay, so we're going to prep a few things first. The first thing you want to think about is the size of your box. So I was mentioning this in Design Space. You may want to measure it. Most of the shadow box packaging will actually come with the measurements of what the inside is. It's usually like 3/4 of an inch less than what the full size of the box is. But you might want to measure that to be sure. And then you can take a look at that chart that I created for rosette size to give you an idea of how many you may need across and down in order to fill the box up. And then you can just multiply the top times the side to get how many rosettes you would need to cut out to fill your box. And I'll kind of show you as I do that through the project here. First thing I want you to do is take your shadow box apart. So if you have a shadow box that you're able to disassemble the pieces and remove the glass, you want to do that at this point. So I'm going to remove the back here, set the back aside, and then I'm going to get my glass out here. So we have our frame piece, the glass that goes in first, then this piece to hold the glass in, and then finally the backing. So mine breaks apart like this, and I have a resource for these different shadow box sizes that I'm using here. You can also find shadow boxes that don't have this removable part. If that is you and you are not able to access a shadow box that is removable like this, then I strongly recommend measuring the inside here lip of your box to make sure that you're placing things far enough in on your mat board here so that you're able to get the frame over it, because you won't have the ability to glue directly into the box like I'm doing here. So just make sure you're being careful with your measurements on that, and you shouldn't have any problems. All right, so I'm going to set these pieces aside here for now, the glass and those other pieces. I'm just going to set them off to the side. And this is our back piece. And what we want to do with this back piece here is I want to cover it with a coordinating paper. This is technically optional, but I really like doing this because it makes it look like, you know, there's not a lot of space between the flowers, and it complements the colors of your flowers and really adds to that ombre effect. So what I'm going to do here is I have a piece of cardstock. I went ahead and got a 12 by 12 piece for this part because this is a 10 by 10 square. So I wanted to be able to cut it all seamlessly. So I'm just going to flip that over and put it at the top corner of the paper. And I'm going to trace with a pencil down each side here. And we'll take that off, and then we'll go ahead and cut this out. You can cut it with scissors. If you have a straight cutter on hand, then you're welcome to do the straight cutter as well, and be able to trim this down to size to fit on the back of our shadow box here. So we have our base here, and now we have our piece of cardstock that is cut down to size. So I'm going to go ahead and put this cardstock on first. You could use a liquid glue if you're more comfortable with that. Mine has like a fabric backing here, and you can technically remove this if you want to peel that up and put the paper directly onto the cardboard. I'm going to leave it as it is and just put hot glue here and glue it down. I did that with this box and I didn't have any problems with that. So that's what I'm going to do again here. Let's go ahead and take our backing here. So this is the backing we just worked on. And I have a couple of rosettes. So once you get maybe like 3 or 4 rosettes done, this would be a good place to give yourself a better idea. And I'm just gonna put them up here and I'm gonna look here. All right, so we've got 3 there. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's going to be 8 across for me here. And then I know it's going to be 8 down because it's a perfect square, so we know the sides are going to be the same. All right, so I have finished rolling all of my rosettes here. I know I have a good amount to work with. I've done them in different shades, and I'm going to start with my darkest shade up here at the top. If you wanted to work from the bottom up, you could as well. If you wanted to start with your lighter shade at the top, that's completely up to you. You do want to pay attention that you have, if you have a particular top, that you have your hanging part facing that correct way. So if you plan on hanging it, not just sitting it on like a table, then just be mindful of that as you're putting this together. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and start by gluing each one of these right along the top in here. I'm just gonna add some hot glue and I'm gonna press it up here to the top. You don't wanna press it like super tight against the frame, but it can be flush with it. You could add glue directly onto the back or the back of the flower as I just did a minute ago. And then I'm just going to continue all the way across here. Okay, so there is our first row in. Now here is where the offset feature would come in if you wanted to do it. You could just continue on and line everything up. One reason I don't like to do that is because it creates sort of this little diamond shape between them, and I prefer to have it more flush. So what I like to do is there's 8 in this row, so I'll actually do 7 down here, and I will offset them so that the one is going in between. So that's what that would look like there, doing an offset, and that's just my preference. Now, for the little bit of gap that you'll leave over here, once the glass is on, it's actually even less noticeable, but if that bothers you at all, you could either make slightly smaller rosettes to put there, or you could add a little bit of greenery and place a leaf right here. Just like that. And these leaves will be included if you wish to go that route. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this next row in here. Okay, so there is our second row in there, and I'm going to continue progressing through the lighter shades of pink here and working my way down. So now that I did 7 here, if you're doing the offset method, you're going to do 8 in the next row and repeat the process. Okay, there is our third row done, and we're just going to repeat this process as we work our way to the bottom. Alright, so here's where we're at right now, and I'm going to continue on the same way I've been doing all along. And as you can see here, now that I'm several rows in, I really like this offset effect just because it brings everything together a little bit more, adds a nice diagonal going along this, and it just looks a lot more pretty to the eye in my opinion. But it is ultimately completely your choice. Okay, I'm down to my last row here. Once you get down to this point, it gets really exciting because you finally get to kind of see all your work come together. Alright, so we have finished adding all of those rosettes to the box. And if you look really closely, there are those little gaps because we did the offset. So if that bothers you at all, then you can take some leaves and you could gently curl them with a wood dowel or a pencil, or even use your Cricut scraper tool to curl them. And you could tuck with some glue leaves right in like that. And you could go down just every other row where that tiny little gap is to add a little bit of green color. I'm happy with the way mine looks. I don't mind those at all, especially once the glass gets over. It's going to be even more hard to see. So I'm going to leave it as is, but that is an option for you if you want to tuck those leaves in there. Okay, so now we get to remove this, put the glass back on, and then bring it all together. So I'm going to flip this over and remove the back. Nice and slow. There is our rosette piece. You may want to take a cloth, a damp cloth, and wipe this down so there's any, debris of dust or anything on it that you don't want when you're putting this in your frame. I've already done that step, but that's just a note for you. All right, so now it's time to add this to our actual shadow box. So I recommend taking your first inner piece here and working that on separately, because it is going to still pose a little bit of a challenge to get these on, even though we glued them in the way we did. And that's normal. It's just because we glued everything edge to edge. So we have to kind of whittle it back on. All right, so we got that piece on. And then you'll want to set your glass over the top. And then you'll want to set this down over the whole thing. Just like that. Flip it over. It's catching here. There we go. And then you can just push all of your little pieces down. And then flip your shadow box over to see your pretty result. All right, so that is how you would assemble your shadow box here with the flowers, full process. Now you could stop right here and leave it, or if you want, you could add something to the glass frame. There are two ways you could do this. You could cut some vinyl out and add something directly to the glass on the outside, or before you put the glass back in, you could actually add it to the inside and just mirror it in Cricut Design Space so that it's facing the correct direction, and it would be in on the inside and the front would be completely smooth. So I'm going to show that process with this one right here. I want to leave this one as it is, but I'll put some white vinyl on this one.
Okay, so I'm also going to be adding, like I said, something to the glass here. Here's a couple of designs that you can find linked below this video. I'm going to be featuring this one here with one of my favorite Bible verses. You could use this one here, which I also did for my mom for Mother's Day, or you could just type out your own design or find something else to put on the front. There's nothing you need to do to prep this after you upload it via the upload button here. All you need to do is think about your size. So make sure you measure the glass of your shadow box, not the shadow box as a whole, because you don't want to include the frame. You just want to measure the glass area. So my shadow box is 10 by 10. I know that I want, oops, make sure we're scaling that as a whole. I know that I want mine to have obviously a little space on each side of it. So I'm thinking, since this is a little bit taller than it is wide, 9 inches would be about perfect. It's going to give ½ an inch of space on the top and the bottom here, and then it'll give plenty of space here on the left and the right side. And then the last thing you'll want to do is, if you're just doing this in one color like I am, you may want to attach this together. So the text and the butterflies will come in separately, but if you want them to cut out exactly as they are here, this placement, you may want to click and drag over that and hit the attach button at the bottom of the layers panel to your right hand side. So that's what I would recommend. I'm just going to group these together and hide them in my layers panel over here. Again, we'll click on the make it button. Now, here's where you have two options. You can leave it just like this. We're going to be cutting this out in permanent vinyl. Or you can mirror this and put it on the inside of the glass so that once it's been put on the inside of the glass and it's reversed, it's going to read the correct direction. The reason I like putting it on the inside of the glass is because it protects the vinyl, makes it last longer. And if you're dusting the shadow box, you don't have to worry about like wiping over the top of the vinyl. It'll be completely smooth because this will be inside of the shadow box. So if you want to go that route, you need to toggle on the mirror right here and it'll flip it. And then when we put it on the correct direction, when we put it on and flip it, the correct direction will read as it's supposed to. So let's click continue now. Again, we're going to connect to our Cricut machine. I'm just using a Cricut permanent white vinyl. So I'm going to select that accordingly here in Cricut Design Space. I'm just going to click browse all materials. And let's take a look at the premium permanent glossy is what I am using here. So I'm going to hit done and we're going to go ahead and cut this out.
All right, so if you're cutting your vinyl out, I'm using a permanent vinyl here, and I'm just going to place this on my mat. And this is completely optional, but I thought I would show it for those of you who want to go through this process as well. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and load my mat here, and it's going to cut out our design. Peel my mat away here. And I'm going to trim off my excess vinyl here. And starting at the top corner here, I'm going to weed my design using a weeding tool. Get it started there. You want to go nice and slow to make sure everything is staying down. It should stay down. Alright, so I have my design weeded here, and now I need to put some transfer tape on top of our design. And I'm just using a standard transfer tape here. Trim that down to size, and I'm going to lay it on top of my weeded design. And then you want to use your Cricut scraper tool here to burnish the design. Burnish is just a term for rubbing. So we're going to rub the transfer tape over the design here. And you also want to pick it up, flip it over, and burnish it from the back. Alright, so I'm going to set that aside for just a moment, and I'm going to get my glass here taken apart on this one. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually put the design on the inside of the glass, and that's why we mirrored it. You know, if you didn't want to mirror it, then that's fine. You don't have to go through the process of putting it on the inside of the glass. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to peel this back. Actually, you want to flip over, and you want to peel the liner away from the transfer tape. Oftentimes that is much, much better. And if anything is catching, then you can press with your finger and crease and roll it away, and then it will stick to that transfer tape for you. So there's another word here that's not sticking, so I'm gonna press and crease the liner and then roll it away. There we go. Alright, so I have my glass here, and I'm going to go ahead and place this on, and it's backwards, as you can see, because we're going to reverse it. And I'm just going to kind of hover it until it looks centered to my eye. Alright, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to burnish this on with my Cricut scraper again. Okay, once you've burnished it really well, you want to go ahead and start peeling that transfer tape up. And when you peel transfer tape up, it's natural to want to sort of lift. You want to actually pull back towards you at a 90-degree angle, and that will help encourage the vinyl to stay down rather than to lift because you're pulling up. So pull back like this, and go nice and slow, and make sure that nothing is lifting up on you. There we go. And then because I mirrored it, when we flip it this way, we can see our pretty design the correct direction, but when we put the glass back in, it's going to be smooth on the outside because the vinyl is on the inside. And that's completely optional, but I really like that because it just makes it that much more preserved to where the vinyl isn't going to end up getting like dust on it or anything like that, and it'll last that much longer and be a really great keepsake. So I'm going to put the glass back on here. Like that, looks so pretty. And then we'll put this back down. There we go. And then we'll want to flip and put our back on. There we go, that is all finished. I love both approaches where you just leave it or it's with some sort of vinyl on it. They're both really pretty in their own way. It's really just what you're looking for. And I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I really enjoyed teaching it. It's a beautiful gift, a great keepsake, something to put in your own home. and they will last forever.
If you enjoyed this tutorial, I hope to see you in my member vault. Of course, we offer many free things on Abbi Kirsten Collections, but I also have a premium member vault where you can access every design I have ever made. There is tons of seasonal crafts in there, Cricut tutorials, printables, cheat sheets, SVG files, and so much more waiting for you. So I hope you will hop on board with that. You can find all the information below, and there are loads of more creative ideas and tutorials waiting for you. We add new projects every single month, so there's always something new every time you log in. I hope to see you there. Bye for now.